Welcome to the Moster Show.
Hello, and welcome to the Moster Show, where we discuss news, politics, and current events as it relates to the Jewish community and beyond. I'm your host, Naftuli Moster. Today's episode is a difficult one for multiple reasons. It involves people and organizations that I personally know, and the topic, allegations of sexual misconduct, has caused a lot of pain and anguish to individuals, institutions, and communities both inside and outside the Orthodox Jewish world. Many of you are probably familiar with the organization called Footsteps, which helps people who leave the Haredi community, often referred to as OTD people or off the derech. But for about a decade, another smaller organization called Frightom also served this population, mostly as a supplement to Footsteps. But about 2.5 years ago, Frightom ceased operations after Footsteps put out a cryptic announcement that they will no longer collaborate with Frightom or refer people to Frightom due to, quote, a lack of safety at Frightom events. That set off a mini storm in the OTD world. It prompted others on social media to pile on and make allegations against Frightom and its founder. After initially putting out a statement that it was unaware of the complaints and insisting that it investigates any complaints that are brought to their attention, Frightom essentially stopped functioning and its founder vanished from the public eye. Until now. In this episode, I sit down with Gene Steinberg to hear what went down from his perspective, of course. And I should note that at the very end, I will read a short statement that Footsteps executive director sent me after I gave her a heads up about the interview and the claims that Gene makes in it. I want to note something else, especially to the many Haredi listeners and viewers. Although our discussion portrays leaving the Haredi community as a neutral or positive thing, and both organizations help or have helped people do so, that doesn't reflect my own opinion. I've come to the conclusion that in most cases, leaving the community is unnecessary and unwarranted, and frankly, results in worse outcomes, not better. In fact, I plan to do an entire separate episode on that topic alone. Anyway, I hope you find this conversation interesting and informative, and please share it with your friends, colleagues, and family members, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Welcome, Gene. Thank you for agreeing to sit down with me. Before we begin, actually, I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to finally sit down and speak about this topic?
First, thank you for inviting me and for the opportunity to be here. This is going to be the first time that I talk publicly about it. So recently, a few friends of mine told me that I owe it to Freidom members that they get to hear from me because it's their pain too. So when you asked me to come on your podcast, I agreed to sit with you.
Thank you. So let's start from the beginning, your beginning. Where did you grow up? What kind of schools did you attend? Tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
So I was born and raised in Kiryas Joel, which is in Monroe, New York, a Satmar Hasidic village. And I went to school. My entire schooling was from kindergarten to young 20s was in Satmar Hasidic Yeshiva.
And what was your education like growing up?
Your typical religious Judaic studies. That's pretty much it.
And I'm going to assume you had pretty limited exposure to the outside world.
That's correct. The idea of the village of Kiryas Joel being created by the Satmar Rebbe was that we should be insulated and not be exposed to the outside world.
So would you say you had any kind of exposure to girls or basically people from the opposite sex?
Well, growing up in the Satmar and general in the Hasidic community, the sexes are segregated. So the interaction that I would have had with girls would be my sisters and my cousins.
And at what point did you leave the community?
In my mid-20s.
Did you go to Footsteps when you first left?
Actually, I did not. I did not find out about Footsteps until after I left, maybe a year or two afterwards. But eventually I did join, and it was mostly to be supportive to others who were at Footsteps, who were going through the journey of leaving the community.
So at some point you started Frightom, and I wanted to know, why did you start Frightom? Was it meant to sort of be a competition to Footsteps? Was it meant to supplement Footsteps? Was it that Footsteps was located in New York City and you wanted something more sort of beyond that, like Rockland County, Gears Joel area? What was the sort of impetus of starting Frightom?
So I started Freidom in 2012 as a social group for people who grew up in the Orthodox Jewish community and have since left, for them to be able to socialize and meet other people. In 2010, my best friend, Rachel Novi, ended her life, and I started Freidom in her memory. When I was at Footsteps and I was supporting other members, I realized that social was one of the big supports needed for people who leave. Footsteps did not have social events. Footsteps was not open on the weekends and holidays, and I found that to be a crucial time when people needed social, so I started Frightom to fill that gap. Actually, you mentioned Rockland County. While I was at Footsteps, I was also advocating on behalf of other members, and I was the one who pushed Footsteps to expand to Rockland County. And for the first year in Rockland, the Rockland support group was held in my apartment.
So sort of Footsteps of Rockland was being held in your apartment, or did they just help facilitate a support group that happened to meet in your apartment?
No. Footsteps officially, the pushback from Footsteps was, we don't think that there's a need in Rockland. Why don't we do a beta version for a year? Let's see. And I told them there's absolutely a need. So they said, you know what, fine. Footsteps will come up for a year. And they said, we don't have a space. Find us a space where we can host it and we'll consider it.
Right.
And I found a space, my apartment. And for a year, it was held in my apartment.
Got it. I just want to expand a little bit. You said that Footsteps didn't do a lot of social. If you could just elaborate just a drop. So are you saying that Footsteps focused more on what versus what you were specifically looking for?
So Footsteps had a lot of different services, including in-person support groups, but that's not a social. What I'm talking about is people hanging out in a backyard in a barbecue, going to a restaurant, going to the movies, meeting up in someone's apartment. Actually social, it was a form of support through socializing, but it wasn't a social worker or therapy. Now, individual members could talk to each other about what's on their mind, but it wasn't the focus of professional therapy support.
Okay, so you started Frightom. Was Frightom a nonprofit? Did you ever intend for it to be a nonprofit? What was it?
So eventually Frightom did become a nonprofit, but when I started out Frightom, my idea was just people getting together as friends, becoming friends, socializing. I didn't think of it. I had no intention of it becoming a nonprofit. So in the beginning, it was just, as I mentioned, people hanging out, people getting together. In 2014, I brought on my then partner, Mary, who came to help. She met some members of the community, and she was inspired. She believed in the mission, so she got on board. And she also helped support for a while. She kept it with her personal money to keep it afloat. In 2015, when the organization grew way bigger than we imagined, and at that point, we have also implemented additional support because in addition to the social, we saw a need to introduce members to different experiences than they grew up, and also specifically or especially hands-on education on societal norms, because people growing up in the community, in the Frum community, they know the norms from the Frum community, but that's very different than the norms in secular society. So once we added that on, there was a lot more we were doing, and we
Can you give an example what that meant? You said you tried to introduce people to sort of basically the secular world. Give me some examples of how you did that. Besides events?
So going to a restaurant, we had a lot of members who have never been in a sit-down restaurant and didn't know how to order. And it could be overwhelming.
Wow.
The menu has a lot of things. What do I order? What's an appetizer? What's an entree? And then, I have to tip? Because in the firm world, tipping is not really the norm. So how much do I tip? Does it have to be cash? So many little things that we take for granted.
Right.
Someone who leaves does not know how to order a drink in a bar.
Oh, wow.
You name it, little things. And there was a lot. So, as I said, in 2015, we grew way bigger than expected.
Right.
So we decided to incorporate as a nonprofit because we wanted to be able to accept donations.
I see.
So once we incorporated, I also asked a few friends to join to form a board because legally you need a board. So the board consisted of myself and 3 women, 2 of which were not raised Hasidic.
Were you ever paid anything by Frightom?
No. Sorry, I'm laughing, but that sounds like a weird question to me because me getting paid by Frightom for what? But I worked as a volunteer for Frightom throughout, from beginning to end. Frightom didn't have money. We worked on a shoestring budget. The largest budget we had for 1 year was $20,000.
Wow.
And as I mentioned before we incorporated, Mary helped pay for it from her own money. And then even when we incorporated, we accepted some donations. There wasn't money for payroll and most things that organizations need. So I worked 80-hour weeks as a volunteer.
And how long did you run Frightom for?
12 years.
Wow. And during that time, so you didn't get paid from Frightom, you ran it for 12 years. Did you do anything else any other side jobs or main jobs, basically to earn an income?
No, in the beginning, I actually was going to school for about 3 years, so I was living off my savings. Then Mary came around, and as I mentioned, she believed in the mission, so she supported it. Mary had a day job, and she volunteered as well in the evenings and the weekends.
Got it. I don't know if Mary's comfortable sort of you elaborating a little bit. Why was she so passionate about this kind of topic?
She met the people. Interestingly enough, when I met Mary in the beginning and when we started dating, she said, this Frightom thing takes up too much of your time. What's so special about it? Why can't we have more alone time? And I told her, come to one event and meet the people. And after one event, she told me, I understand now why you're so passionate about this, and I get it. And she got super involved.
What's her own background?
Mary, too, grew up in a fundamentalist community. She was raised fundamentalist Christian, so she had some understanding, and I guess she could relate to some of the things, even though she had way more exposure to secular society, and she still could not believe certain things that our members were clueless about.
Okay, great. So how did Frightom work? Like, how did people join Frightom?
So we would post everywhere on social media about the existence of Frightom. Members would reach out to try to join. We would set up an intake vetting process. And once they were vetted and approved, there was somewhere where they could see the online events, and people would register RSVP for the events. And we didn't put out the actual location for safety reasons. We didn't put out the actual address. Until the day of the event, we only sent it to the individuals who were vetted, who had registered.
And I know you sort of alluded to it before, but how did paying for the basic expenses work? Who paid for the food or, the just basic necessities?
So it varied, but for many events, members paid their own way. If we went to a restaurant, they would pay their own food and drinks. If we went to a movie or some type of venue, they would pay for their own ticket. But we also had events that were sponsored by donors and occasionally by members, and specifically some of our larger events.
I see. Is it true that sometimes you would get leftover cholent from your mother to serve at Frightom events?
No, it wasn't sometimes. It was all the time.
Okay. Wow. Glad I asked. It's my understanding, and you've sort of alluded to it, that Frightom had some very strict policies around confidentiality and safety. Can you tell us more about that?
So, in general, attending, specifically for people in the community, but even people who have already left and may have a custody battle going on or may have work, business in the community, it's a big risk for them to be seen at a Frightom event. So, our vetting process was twofold. Number one, we try to make sure that this potential member is safe for the Frightom community. But also we would try to make sure that the Frightom community is safe for that individual. Because a lot of times people just assumed, oh, if I go to Frightom, it's safe, there's no risk. And you always take a risk when you attend one of those events. So we would make sure, and we put a lot of emphasis, that the individual understands the risk they're taking and then makes an educated decision whether they want to join.
So there are two types of safety concerns I could see. One is this sort of the safety from the confidentiality, like the fear of being caught by the community, right? So going to Frightom is a no-no, right? People were supposed to be in their community, go to shul, whatever, not be seen in a place where other OTD, formerly religious people, hang out. I get that. What are some other sort of potential safety concerns you were taking into consideration?
So we always had to make sure that the individual trying to join is actually trying to join because they need support and not because they're looking for a dating group or they think it's fun or they, as you mentioned, want to just come and see who's there so they can report back. So those were all things that we had to take into consideration. And not everyone who reached out to Frightom was accepted because we had our vetting process, and if we didn't feel comfortable, the community's safety comes first.
And during the time you ran Frightom, you also launched another initiative.
You're referring to Kind Air, which is Kind Air was a listening hotline for anyone who is or was Orthodox Jewish. Kind Air was independent of Frightom, and the reason being because it also served from Jews.
Interesting. So did you get a lot of calls from Jews? How did it work?
We did get quite a few. So the people who reached out to our hotline were usually the ones who were looking for an outlet where you can have a non-dogmatic, non-judgmental listening ear. So yes, we had quite a few from callers as well. Now, their call wouldn't necessarily relate to struggling with religion per se, although some of them that was too. But we also provided resources if we knew of any, if the call would require that. And if need be, we also did crisis support.
So let's get into the actual topic of what happened to Frightom since then. So in around September of 2023, Footsteps, which is a different organization that serves, formerly Haredi Jews, I guess, puts out this email statement of some sort saying that they've decided to stop partnering, I think, with Frightom. And so before we continue, what was the extent of the partnership between Footsteps and Frightom in the first place?
So we didn't actually have a partnership with Footsteps. The only two things that we had, so Footsteps had reached out to us asking us to provide a list, if we can provide them a list of our events so that they can include it in their weekly email to the members so their members have options of social. And additionally, whenever we had a community safety concern, we would always share it with Footsteps. Even though we had membership confidentiality, we believed that community safety supersedes member confidentiality, so we would share with them any concerns in that regard. So when Footsteps put out the message that they're no longer going to partner, what that meant is that they're no longer going to include our events in their weekly email.
So Footsteps puts out this statement. So they say, we decided to stop partnering with Frightom due to, I think, a lack of safety measures, something like that. And social media erupts. Obviously, I'm talking about OTD social media. It's pretty contained. And initially, it seemed like people didn't know what was happening, why, what were the safety concerns. I think some people maybe had some sort of guess that there's always been like a bit of a rivalry, perhaps, between Footsteps and Frightom, but nothing major. So this came a little bit as a surprise. So at that point, did you know what lack of safety Footsteps was referring to?
No, we didn't have any idea of what the complaint was because Footsteps did not tell us what it was. So, but let me break this down to you. There was a difference in ideology between Footsteps and Frightom over the years. There's this perception that at Footsteps you need to know how to behave and interact socially before you come to Footsteps, or you risk getting suspended or banned. At Frightom, we believe that this is the place where you come to learn how to socialize, how to interact in secular society. Our members come from a community where the sexes are segregated. A lot of our members, when they first started out, were socially awkward because they have never spoken to anyone of the opposite sex and they did not know how to do that. So we very much believe that this is the place, among other things, where we would educate you. So if somebody made a mistake, it was our job to let them know and teach them on how to do better. I'm not talking about egregious mistakes. I'm talking awkwardness. Now, we took community safety very seriously, and if somebody made a mistake, either we talked to them and educated them, or if need be, we would suspend them and require them to work with a social worker until they can resume their membership, or we would ban them.
Mm-hmm. So, which social worker? You would provide that, or they would have to find it on their own?
No. So we either told them if you can get to go to Footsteps as a social worker or on your own. We require that you have a social worker. We did not provide. We didn't have money for social workers, and we required also that we have permission to discuss their case if they wanted to come back with their social worker. So what happened at some point, some of our volunteers wanted Frightom to adopt and take on the policy, or more the ideology of Footsteps, where it's discipline first, educate later. People were uncomfortable. People said, oh, I don't feel comfortable here. People making me feel unsafe. Now, there's a big difference between actually someone doing something inappropriate and someone being awkward and someone else feeling unsafe. And I'll give you some examples to explain what I mean. So I received a complaint that a woman was made uncomfortable by a guy, but the guy was being creepy. I spoke to this woman and I asked her what happened. Turns out that a guy was interested in her, asked her out on a date, she declined, and the guy respected and moved on. But to this woman, she was never used to being asked out. She comes from a community where there's arranged marriages.
Right.
She felt extremely unsafe, uncomfortable. So instead of approaching the guy, we spoke to her and we educated her about courting in secular society and how things work, and that it's totally okay. She did the right thing to say no if she's not interested, that there shouldn't be any pressure and people need to respect the boundaries. And if someone doesn't respect the boundaries, that's something that they should report. But in this case, while it's true that she felt unsafe or uncomfortable, the guy did nothing wrong.
I see.
Another example, a woman told me that a new member showed up to an event. They spoke for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, this guy tells her, you're really beautiful. I'd love to have sex with you. Are you interested? And the woman said no. And the guy's like, okay, and moved on. I approached the guy. I asked him, I said, I heard a complaint. Is it true? And he said, yes. Why? Did I do something wrong? And I had to explain to him, he was clueless. He didn't understand that, of course, he was respectful by
backing off.
But he didn't understand that even asking in the first place. He said, I left the community. I don't know. I thought this, how else would I know? Mm-hmm. So we spoke about it. And I suggested that he watches some YouTube videos and read some articles on courting and dating and how that works. And this member turned out to be a very upstanding member for many years. But still, there were quite a few who insisted that we ban this member. We never had another complaint since, but they insisted because he's a creep, because he made one mistake on his first event and didn't know. Another example is there were members who wanted that anyone who voted for Trump or is fond of the Orthodox community because they still have good memories or dresses Hasidic, that they should not be allowed at Freidom events because it makes them feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Well, Frightom was not in the business of telling people who to vote for, how to dress, and how to feel about the community they left. So, of course, we didn't do anything about it. And some people didn't like. So what I'm getting at is we didn't have any complaints about about Freidom events feeling unsafe, but we were aware that some people said that. And when the board pushed back against the volunteers, like some of the things that these volunteers demanded was that no one can, at Freidom events, you can't ask someone out on a date. This is a social venue. It's not a singles event. And you don't. We have quite a few members who met at Freidom who are married today and who have families.
I see.
I mean, what are these kids that you can't, the whole idea is that we teach them how to interact in secular society, not that you come to us and we have rules similar to the community that you left.
Right. Well, I guess in playing devil's advocate or just in their defense, you've said yourself that you wanted to make it clear from the beginning when people joined that Frightom is not a place where you go to find girls to date. But I guess you're trying to sort of be nuanced about it, that you don't come here with that objective, but you socialize, you meet someone, you strike up a conversation, things go well, you're allowed to ask someone out. Is that what you're saying?
It was a social group.
Right.
And the social groups...
Grown-ups,
it's going to happen. Yes, we didn't allow someone that we didn't believe fits the criteria of needing support from Frightom. The only reason they're trying to come here is because they want to find a dating group.
Right.
But if somebody really struggled with belief or had left the community and they just wanted a social circle, why would that be an issue? These volunteers had demands that we put in some modesty rules in place because we went to a camping trip once and someone who maybe wasn't the most attractive guy took off the shirt. When the attractive guy took off the shirt, nobody complained. So, I mean, it was pretty ridiculous of the demands. And the board pushed back. And when they weren't happy that the board didn't accept their ideology of how they believed Frightom should be run, then they went spreading the narrative that it's unsafe.
Okay, so we're going to get to that part, but did you ever find out what the complaint was about? Because it sounded like Footsteps puts out the statement that seemed to suggest a very specific, concrete complaint that caused them to decide that Frightom is not safe, and therefore they don't want to be partners with you. So have you figured out what that specific complaint was about?
Yes, eventually we figured out, and it turned out that it was an untrue story that Footsteps did not bother to investigate. Let me just tell you how it started. I got an email from Lonnie from Footsteps saying that we have received a complaint that Frightom events are not safe, therefore we are no longer going to promote Frightom events. Okay. Additionally, we have received a complaint against you, as in me, alleging sexual misconduct. Didn't specify what that meant. And said, we are going to conduct an investigation and we will get back to you within a month. A month later, without any further contact, they put out this public message. At that point, I still don't know what happened. I just assumed it's maybe these volunteers basically said that it's unsafe. I didn't know what to think of it. And a month later, after they put out the message, Lonnie contacted the Freidom board and wanted to tell them what went down and what led to them putting out this statement. So here's what supposedly happened. Footsteps received a complaint that a woman that I was seeing at the time asked to join Frightom, and I told her, don't join Frightom because I want to sleep with you. But once you become a member, I can't sleep with you, which would be an abuse of power if true.
Right.
Except that never happened. I met this woman at a different event, non-Frightom event, a mutual friends event, and that woman never asked to join Frightom. The board was aware of my relationship at the time. They were aware of how we met. Now, it gets better. Footsteps received this complaint from a third party. And their investigation consisted of corroborating it with another third party. They never reached out to me. They never reached out to the Freidom board. They never reached out to this woman in question. Had they done either of these three, they would have known that it's not true. Instead,
So you just met this woman, you were dating, and it has this whole story is just a misunderstanding or fabrication.
That this woman never asked to join Frightom. I never told her not to join because I want to sleep with her. None of this happened. But apparently two third parties. Now, I don't know if this came from the volunteers who had already an issue with Frightom based on what I mentioned before with the ideology. I don't know. But had Footsteps done a simple phone call and asked the board, or a simple phone call and asked this woman in question, or asked me, they would have known that this isn't true.
Wow. Okay, so this statement goes out, the social media erupts, and then sort of a little bit later, there's this anonymous open letter shows up on social media. I think it was on Reddit. And the person, I think it was entitled, I Am a Victim of Gene Steinberg, something like that. I'll try to read a little bit of it. And I can't read the whole thing, but she basically goes on to say that she was fresh out of the community and she had been Shomanagia I think it's a she, by the way. I hope, maybe I'm making a mistake here. But she was Shomanagia until that point. Shomanagia means that they wouldn't touch a person from the opposite sex, and until marriage, of course, at which point you can only touch your spouse. And she came to this Frightom event. There was music, dancing, and you, the executive director, you were drinking alcohol, I'm assuming, and dancing. And you pulled her into the dance floor, and you danced in a manner that involved excessive touching or even groping. She goes on to say that she notified a woman who, quote, was in charge, okay? And that woman pulled you away from the dance floor. And she then writes that she felt icky and defiled. So what I'm reading here are essentially 2 or 3 allegations that this person's suggesting. One is that you would drink at the social events that you would organize, which I guess if this was just a barbecue you throw in your backyard, or if I throw a barbecue in my backyard and I invite some neighbors, I hope I'm still allowed to drink, right? But in this case, it sounds like there's a different expectation. It's more of it's a communal event for other people. It's part of a nonprofit organization, I guess. So there's an expectation that perhaps, I think, that, you should be sober, you're running the event because some vulnerable people are attending the event, that kind of thing. So that's number one. Second complaint is that you danced and inappropriately sort of groped her. And 3, that she filed a complaint with someone who she says was in charge, so essentially someone part of the organization, and that nothing was done. You continue drinking and dancing at other events and so forth. So this sounds pretty bad, I would say. I don't think, based on what I'm reading, that it crosses into sexual assault, I think. But, it's not a great look. So it makes you look sort of unprofessional, irresponsible. So what do you say about that?
All great questions. So first, I want to say before I address this that it's very difficult to respond to an anonymous post. I have no idea if this happened, what happened, because I don't know the details. It's an anonymous, but I'll try. So, as I mentioned before, part of the Freidom mission was to introduce members to experiences that they were not introduced growing up. Mm-hmm. Part of that is dancing in a secular environment. Mm-hmm. So I saw it as my job usually when, I'm assuming this took place at our holiday party because that's when we had dancing. And there would be the people dancing who were comfortable, and there would be what we call wallflowers standing around and watching. Mm-hmm. So I saw it as my duty to nudge people on.
I'm a wallflower, by the way, in general. Mm-hmm. Weddings. Okay, well, go ahead.
That's because you haven't attended Freidom events.
Okay. Fair.
So I saw it as my duty to nudge people along, not pressure them, but kind of let them feel, hey, it's okay for me to go in. I also didn't know how to dance before. It's fine. And I got a lot of feedback from a lot of members who said, thank you for encouraging me because I didn't know I can dance. I didn't know that it's okay for me to dance. I never did this before. So I'm going to assume that that's the same thing that happened with this woman. Because, again, I don't know. I don't remember the details. I'm saying I don't remember the details of the post.
Right.
Now, when you dance, it's very common. You dance with a partner. You put your hand on their back. You put your hand on their shoulder. It's like partner dancing. Mm. And I can totally believe that someone who grew up, as you said, Shomer Nagia, who is not used to this, to suddenly be with a man dancing and being touched on your shoulder or on your back, that could be a very maybe traumatizing experience even. Mm-hmm. While that's not groping, it could still be difficult for someone to experience that. And I feel terrible that I may have hurt someone or made someone feel that way. And it's definitely a learning moment for me. As far as reporting to the board, when that Reddit post came out, it was the first time that the board heard of it. I never heard of it. No one on the board heard of it. So I'm not sure who this woman spoke to, but as far as we know, what the board told me, they never heard about it. Now, as far as drinking, that's valid criticism. And I'm going to try to explain, and I want to be clear, that's not me making excuses. I just want to explain where my mindset, where I came from. As I mentioned, when we started Frightom, this was a social group, people hanging out, similar to being in your backyard having a barbecue, drinking, going out, and doing things of that type. I would drink with them. I treated everyone as an equal. I didn't see it as a hierarchy, it was just friends getting together. Right. Over time, the organization evolved. It became more of a serious support group. And in hindsight, I too should have evolved and stopped drinking with them. But I continued and didn't realize that now it's no longer. I just saw
your mindset was still sort of like, oh, this is like an informal gathering. We're hanging out friends.
I didn't think it was informal because we became more formal. But my mindset was, these are still people that I view as friends, that I view as equals, and I'm hanging out with them.
Right.
Now, I did make sure that every event, even though I drank, that there was someone else, most of the time married, but I always made sure that there was some organizer or host that did not drink, so that if I drink and I'm not in the best place to be in charge, that someone is in charge. I still cared about that. But in 21, I believe, I was at an event and I drank, and this woman told me afterwards that she felt extremely unsafe when she saw me drinking because she was unaware of anyone being in charge. And what if something happens and the person in charge, there was someone in charge there, but she was unaware. And that's when it hit me. People see me as the person in charge, and I need to do better. I contacted the board. I shared with them the complaint that I received, and I told them that community safety is most important, and I won't be drinking anymore at events. And since 21, I have not drank at events.
So you're saying you proactively went to the board to out yourself as essentially as having been drunk or drank at an event, and you self-imposed on yourself that you're no longer going to drink. So it has nothing to do with that incident that I mentioned before about a woman claiming that you pulled her in and, danced inappropriately?
No, I was unaware of that incident, of that Reddit post. But I didn't feel like I outed myself. I reported to the board everything. I communicated with the board. The board is there to help the organization run properly, and that's their duty.
Okay.
But it was important enough for me that someone felt unsafe and came to me that the board should know about it.
Right. I want to touch on something you said earlier about how you saw it your role to help people sort of learn the ropes of the secular world. And I'm wondering about that. I'm a little bit torn because, what if in fact it's someone who is toying with the idea of exploring the secular world, and they still have a path to go back, right? By you introducing them, pulling them in, and yes, even dancing what would be considered appropriate in the secular world, but not appropriate at all in the Haredi world, perhaps you force them to cross a line that they now feel they actually can't go back into the community having crossed that threshold. I'm just curious about this.
It's a valid point. Haven't thought of it that way. But the way I saw it was somebody comes here to receive the support, and they're aware that what we're doing is to help them integrate, to socialize, and to be introduced to different experiences. I said, obviously, if somebody said, I don't want, then you back off. Now, most of the time, people say, nah, but it's more social peer pressure that they're worried, I'm going to look weird when I dance kind of thing. So you encourage them a little bit, and hopefully they do it. But to your point, I want to say, when I mentioned I worked 80-hour weeks, we didn't have events for 80 hours a week. A lot of what I did was one-on-one working with members and being supportive in whichever way they needed. And we had, I wouldn't say a lot, but I would say more than a dozen members that I'm aware of who came, explored with Frightom, struggled, and either they still believed or they didn't believe, but it was just too difficult for them to navigate secular society. They were used to, they knew the ins and outs of the frum community, and they would come to me and discuss it. And not once have I tried to persuade someone to not go back to the community. In fact, there were members where I told them, it sounds like you've thought about this. This makes sense. So you got to do what's best for you.
Right.
My sole goal of running Frightom was to assist people in ways that they want and whatever makes them happy, hopefully. And if going back to the community is what makes you happy or makes your life easier, even if you're not happy, but it's happier than living the secular life, then that may be the best decision for you. It's an individual journey, and I would encourage. In fact, I had at least 3 members who went back fully into the community, but every now and then reached out for support for specific things that they felt that they could only talk to me. And I would provide the support just the same way, because why not? I didn't have an agenda other than trying to assist and support individuals in the way they want to be supported.
Okay, so aside from these things that we discussed, the incident which Footsteps seems to have alluded to, which according to you was a misunderstanding, it was your own girlfriend, had nothing to do with Frightom.
I want to clarify, it wasn't a misunderstanding, it was untrue.
Okay, there was that. There was the incident that someone anonymously posted on Reddit and then Facebook, which you're saying no one from Frightom even knew about that incident, so not that. And then there was the incident where someone did tell you that you drinking made them concerned and you voluntarily gave up drinking during events. Has there ever been, prior to that, had there been a complaint about you?
Yes and no, and I'll explain. In 22, a mentor volunteer, which is someone who mentors our younger volunteers, came to the board and told them that I've been sexually harassing a younger volunteer. And the board took this very seriously. They had to, they decided they're going to investigate. Obviously, I told the board that I have no idea what they're talking about because I never did anything of that sort, but the board couldn't take my word. After their investigation was done, the board told me that they had reached out directly to the younger volunteer who supposedly I was sexually harassing, and that volunteer told the board, both over phone and in writing, that I never sexually harassed her, that I never made her feel unsafe. She feels very comfortable around me. The one complaint that she had to the mentor was that it's difficult for her to work with my working style, that I can be micromanaging or something like that.
I see.
And that was the complaint. It was the mentor who on her own decided to tell the board that it was sexual harassment.
Why do you think that person did that?
I don't know, but the mentor themselves told the board that the younger volunteer did not complain of sexual harassment because she didn't know it's sexual harassment. She had to explain to her that it's sexual harassment, and she took it on her own to tell the board about sexual harassment. And the volunteer, the younger volunteer, also told the board that I never said sexual harassment. I never felt unsafe. That didn't come from me.
Interesting. Okay. So one other thing I saw on Facebook, I think, or whatever social media, was the suggestion that sexual assault, or at least sexual harassment, was essentially running rampant and at Frightom events. Essentially that I think the guys didn't respect boundaries and stuff like that. Is that true? What do you say about that?
I saw those posts as well. No, it's not true. We took community safety and complaints very seriously, specifically complaints about people not respecting boundaries. I can say that in the 12 years of Frightom, I can count on one hand, less than one hand, the number of complaints of sexual assault and stalking that we have received. And in two of those cases, it turned out to be that there was two people who were romantically or intimately involved, which complicates things a lot more. It's unfortunate when Footsteps puts out a message, a vague message, it allows for anything anyone says for people to assume it's got to be true, because their Footsteps wouldn't put out a message if there wasn't something major going on. So that basically led to people posting whatever they felt like. So I saw a post where a member complained and said that the Freidom board did not address what they complained about. I and the board spoke to that member and we discussed it and resolved it. So I have no idea where it's coming from for someone to say that it wasn't. The member afterwards said that the resolution was good. So I don't know where that comes from. I saw a post by a former member, someone who actually had allegations of physical sexual assault, post that the board wronged them. Conveniently left out the part what they were accused of and that they were banned. People reading that post
Sorry, I need to pause you. Someone puts out a post alleging that they were sexually harassed?
No, I'll explain.
Okay.
Somebody puts out a post that the Freidom board wronged them. When there were issues online, people are posting about everything.
I see.
I also had something. The Freidom board wronged me. I'm not alone. This is everyone.
I see.
This member was banned by Freidom. There were allegations of physical sexual assault.
I see, actual assault.
And which they left out that there were allegations, and they left out the fact that they were banned. So people reading their post assumes they don't even know that this is no longer a Freidom member, because when we took action, we didn't necessarily announce this so-and-so was banned or so-and-so was placed on probation, because member confidentiality still applies, but we took action. So by Footsteps putting out that message, it gives credence to anyone and everyone to write whatever they want, and it sounds believable. So to answer your question, no, we didn't have any actual complaints. We knew the rumors about, oh, it's unsafe, or that the board didn't do anything, but no, that did not happen.
Okay, so let's assume if your critics, so to speak, had it their way, and it was, let's say, mandated that before someone joins Frightom, becomes a member, they have to undergo some type of training, social training, sexual interaction kind of training. Would your organization and your population that you serve be able to live with that kind of requirement?
So I believe we actually did that. When I mentioned before that our critic volunteers had demands, they had a lot of demands of us, but while the board did not accept everything, we implement the changes regardless, because if people feel, let's say, we wanted to do more. So our intake, our vetting process, we added a section specifically about boundaries, respecting boundaries. We focused on both having members understand that they need to respect boundaries, but we also put a lot of focus on members understanding that their boundaries need to be expected, that they have a right to autonomy, that if someone does not respect, they should report to us. So I believe we did that. If members had their way, I just thought of something ironic. If we were to do what these critics of ours wanted, one of the main agitators online against Frightom is someone who, when they joined Frightom in the beginning, we had a lot of members, men and women, asking us to ban him from Frightom and not letting him, that he's socially awkward, that he's creepy. In fact, Footsteps actually banned him or suspended him at some point, but we didn't. The reason he's able to now be a member of the Frightom community and a member of this society, to be online, to be the arbiter of who is a creep and who is socially awkward, is because Frightom did not do the thing. We gave him an opportunity for him to do better and to learn.
I see. So if I understand it correctly, this is a person who's vocal against you, or was vocal against you or Frightom on social media, but you're saying that people reading their posts don't even know that they themselves had allegations of some sort against them, to the point where they got banned from one organization. Frightom didn't ban them and let them sort of learn from their mistakes to some degree, and then turn out to be a upstanding member of society. Is that what it is?
What I'm saying is that Frightom's policy was to not ban people for being socially awkward, or for people considering making a mistake and people saying, oh, he's a creep, and we allowed that. And as a result, we have many members who are upstanding citizens in the Fry community, because we didn't just ban them and kick them out because somebody felt that we should.
I see.
But we did, I want to make it clear, when it was egregious, when it warranted, we did.
You banned people?
We banned, we suspended, we didn't allow people coming in. There are a lot of active I shouldn't say a lot. There were quite a few active Footsteps members who were not allowed at Frightom events. We notify Footsteps, and what they do with the information is up to them.
Right.
But we took community safety very seriously.
I see. I'm sure you live in this world. You've seen that every so often a certain organization or entity, someone high up in the ranks gets accused of some type of sexual assault or harassment or something worse. I don't know. And what they tend to do is they tend to sort of hire an outside law firm, or, I don't know, a team of social workers or something. And I actually saw that when this whole thing was, exploding on social media, people were suggesting that Frightom should hire a third-party investigator. Did you do that? And if not, why?
So before I answer, I have a question. Which complaint should a third-party outside organization or outside law firm investigate? Is it the one where it's an anonymous post online? Is it the one where the volunteer told the board that it never happened? Or is it the one where Footsteps didn't bother to investigate and instead put out a
If I
message?
may answer, the answer could be all of the above, by the way. Because one would argue that the board says that the volunteer rescinded their complaint or said that it never happened. It was just about personality conflicts or whatever. I think what these people, these activists are suggesting is that a third party would be able to sort of cut through some of the interpersonal concerns, I don't know.
Who were the complainants? I know there was online, and I know people, as I mentioned before, said Frightom feels unsafe. But I gave you an example, or multiple examples, of what unsafe felt. But you know what? Even if, hypothetically, that would have been a good idea, as I mentioned before, Frightom operated on a shoestring budget. We didn't have more than $20,000 a year. These outside investigators cost thousands of dollars. Who's paying for that? These critics of ours had lots of demands. One of the things that they demanded was that every Freidom event needs to have a social worker, a licensed social worker present. So besides the fact that I disagree with that we don't infantilize our members, they're grown adults, and now we're going to say adults can't socialize without a babysitter or a social worker. Frightom hosted over 300 events a year. On average, 4 hours of an event. Conservatively, that's 1,200 hours, which comes to $78,000 minimum. Our budget was $20,000. Who's paying for that? But in a way, I just want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I understand why people had high expectations of Frightom. While we had a very small budget, our community support output was that of an organization with $4 million. We did a lot with almost nothing. So it makes sense that for people to have expectations that Frightom needs to do more. But in reality, when you understand what the budget was and what we were doing, there just wasn't money for this.
Okay. You've mentioned in your statement after this, you mentioned, that you take allegations seriously and you have policies and such. There's an organization called Zaka, which says that they're fighting against sexual abuse in the Orthodox Jewish community. And they put out some statement, I recall, that suggested that it sort of complained about the fact that you mentioned that you have policies, but why aren't those policies on the website? I think the implication there is that perhaps you actually didn't have a policy and you're just sort of retroactively adopting a policy. I don't know. I'm assuming, I'm reading into that it kind of suggests that you only quickly took on some type of policy to provide cover for yourself and the organization. What do you say to that?
It's true. We didn't have it on the website. But have you seen our website?
No.
We didn't have a budget for a website. Our website was basically put together when Mary had a little extra time between putting so many hours in evenings and weekends on events after her day job. Whatever she could put together and the way she could put together with occasionally help of a member, that's pretty much what our website was. And yes, there's a lot we could have done differently if we had a $4 million budget, but we didn't.
Okay, so you mentioned Mary a few times. I don't know if she's comfortable us speaking in her absence, but do you know how she's felt about this whole thing?
Of course I do. She was livid. She gave years of her life, tons of money of her own personal income to invest in this organization, in the members, in the community, because she believed in the mission. She was there. She knew none of this was true because most of the things that they were saying, she was just as much there at the events. She was aware of how we handled complaints, that we actually took action, and we didn't take action lightly. It was discussed at length because it is a sensitive thing making. We can make a decision and we can ruin someone by taking action if it's not really something. So of course she was upset about all this. This is something that she poured her heart and soul in, and to come up with allegations against me that she knew were not true. But also it wasn't just allegations against me. She was part of the board, and this was part of Frightom. So I do know how she felt.
Okay, so in your statement, the statement that Frightom put out after this erupted, you seem to suggest that you will investigate to find out what the complaint is and so on and so forth, and that, I don't know, presumably you would make it right and then sort of continue on. But it's my understanding that there have been no Frightom events ever since, that you essentially ceased operation, haven't seen you much in the public. So what happened?
As I mentioned, by Footsteps putting out a vague message, it allowed for everything to be believable, which made for a very toxic environment. The last 2.5 years have been very painful. I invest 12 years of my life, or 15 years of my life actually, into a community that I believe in, that I love, that I care about. I gave up a prestigious scholarship that would have gotten me into Columbia because I was devoted and I couldn't do both, and I wanted to focus on this. For all of that to be gone overnight because some organization couldn't be bothered to actually not investigate, but a simple phone call, as I mentioned before, that's super painful. But what's also very painful is Frightom had 1,500 members plus. There were many members who knew exactly how to reach me for support, some of them on a daily basis. And this comes out, and most of them didn't bother reaching out. I didn't exist anymore. They forgot that I even am around. And I'm not asking for people to blindly presume innocence about me, but check in, see what's going on, reach out, tell me I'm a terrible person, but something. And none of that. I remember when I left the Orthodox community, I had over 30 people from the Frum community reach out to me, checking in. Did anyone hurt you? Is there something we can do to be supportive? What do you need? I knew that they love me. I knew that they care about me. Of course, that's not where I wanted to be, but it makes sense. You don't simply overnight forget about someone and move on. There was a time I went back to the community. I went back to KJ. It was a holiday, and I ended up going to shul. And they were so excited for me to be back. They were so enthusiastic in how they received me, even though you would think I left and the way I look. So I just think of it, the irony that the community that I helped build couldn't wait to ostracize me, but the community that I left couldn't wait to welcome me back. So it's difficult. Over the last 2.5 years, I had to convince myself that I don't care about the Fry community, that it doesn't matter to me, they're irrelevant, I've moved on. But I know that's not true, because deep down I care about them, and I very much care about Frightom's mission. So it's extremely difficult, and I don't know where I'm going from here. The way I see it is, for 15 years, I was busy taking care of everyone else. Right now, I'm taking time to focus on myself. We'll see.
Wow. Okay. All right. Wow, this was a tough one, Gene. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
I just want the Freidom community and the Freidom members to know that I love them, I care about them, I miss them, I wish things were differently, and I'm hoping that we can all move forward and heal from this, and hopefully people are doing well. And I also want to thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Gene Steinberg. As promised, here's the statement Footsteps sent me, which I agreed to share with my listeners. Quote, Footsteps' top priority is to promote a safe and respectful environment for our members. In 2023, Footsteps received multiple credible reports about safety concerns at Frightom. In order to center member safety, we made the difficult decision to no longer refer to or endorse Frightom. End quote. Before you leave, please remember to like, comment, and share, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you, and have a great day.